Hello, and welcome to the Thief in the Empty Room podcast, where Zen meets business in a unique exploration of mindfulness and mental health. Join me, your host, Craig French, as I sit down with artists, entrepreneurs, and Zen teachers to uncover the secret of expanding creative problem solving, reducing stress, and finding balance in this fast-paced world. Today's guest for season 2, episode number 3, is Paul Agostinelli, a 3-time startup founder, transmitted Zen teacher, architect of the 3 contracts and manifestation frameworks. Welcome to the show, Paul.
It's great to be here, Craig. Really happy for the invitation.
Paul, obviously, you and I have gotten a chance to know each other quite a bit over the last, year or so, and we've connected and bonded over our love of Zen, our practice, and also a lot of our sort of background in business, entrepreneurship. I think that would be an interesting place to sort of start, which is, how did those two worlds intersect for you? If you could walk us through sort of your whole story, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, my Zen path has kind of been the center of my life going back to my mid-20s. That's kind of what I got most impassioned about and motivated to pursue after a pretty successful academic career, an initial professional career that was very promising. But I started to lose interest in a lot of that, particularly academia, when I was exposed to the experiential, transformative capabilities of Zen meditation practice. So I became a resident at the Zen Center of Los Angeles. I took the Buddhist vows when I was 26 years old. I just really went all in. But a few years into that, I was offered a job by some friends who did a startup, and they had a startup going back in Denver. And I came to this crossroads in my life. I felt like I was on a path almost to become a monk because I was loving meditation so much.
Yeah.
But when I got this offer, I kind of realized that there were important things that I needed to do in my life that I would probably bypass if I just stayed in the monastery. So even though I loved it so much, I decided to move back over to Boulder, Colorado, where I live now. Joined a professional path. I was still committed to maintaining a really deep and regular Zen path.
Yeah.
So I became a student of Shishin Roshi, and I practiced with him for 20 years and became a transmitted teacher 10 years ago and started my own Zen Center here. But all along that path, I've maintained a very active professional career, co-founded 3 startups, worked for a number of companies, mostly technology companies, over the last 20, 25 years, and just been on a path of bringing not just mindfulness into the workplace, but really the deeper lessons of the Dharma in terms of being fully present, fully intentional. You could say even in vow, those like you and me who have taken precepts to be very, very purposeful
Yeah.
in terms of my work life. That's been quite a journey.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. So where did sort of these startups end up taking you in that professional journey?
Yeah, I mean, my first startup was an open source business to business consultancy. Took in some venture funding. This goes way back to 2000. It was January of 2000. We took our money in, and I don't know if you're old enough to remember, but the first tech bubble burst in April of 2000.
Oh,
So after
wow.
taking in $2.5 million, we immediately had to kind of justify that expense, shuck and jive to get a sustainable business because all the hype, had gone out of the balloon in the early internet days, and that was good for us to try to find a real value proposition that people would pay for. And we never kind of made it big, no like big IPOs or big exits. But what I was able to do was establish a really nice consultancy that I was working primarily with nonprofits across the country to develop web systems in the early days of the web, document management systems, document assembly systems
Wow.
for really great organizations, primarily nonprofits, but some media organizations and academic organizations. So I felt very much in purpose in that work, and I was doing very good work. I don't know. Do you want to know more about the other startups, or where do you want to
Well,
go with it?
no. I think what's interesting about what you're sharing is we tend to all be a little bit of prisoners of the moment, and a lot of obviously fear creeps in when things are not going exactly as planned, and there's a dip in the economy, and maybe we've lost a job. I mean, transition scares humans, right? And change
Yes.
scares humans. But what struck me was when you were talking about 2000, that was the year I actually graduated high school in 2000. So I wasn't fully working adult quite yet. But of course, I remember the crash in 2007, 2008, where I was already working and postgraduate college. I feel like people such as yourself, elder statesmen, if you will, it's like you've seen a lot of ebb and flow. And I wonder how that has helped you navigate some of the turbulence that we all experience, knowing that, like, yeah, I've been through the fire and I've came out the other side multiple times in my life, multiple times in my career. So was the economy, so was the country.
Mhm.
Um, does that resonate with you at all?
Absolutely, those are wise words, Craig. Yeah, it really from a Zen perspective, you could say, the world is always on fire.
Exactly.
There's always been chaos and uncertainty and volatility. From your study of Zen, the golden age of Zen, the 8th and 9th centuries in China, or what's considered the height of the great masters, was a time of huge social unrest. It was like the competing warlords all throughout China,
Yeah.
kind of slashing and burning and killing and dominating it. I mean, our volatility nowadays is nothing compared to that. Now, obviously, different social conditions, different historical conditions, different society. The fact of life is that nothing is certain. Nothing is permanent. We are always called moment by moment to show up with our deepest presence and our deepest awareness. And this is our human birthright to bring to this wild and crazy, uncertain life that we all are blessed to have.
Yeah, that's well said. One of the things that I thought of as you were describing the golden age of China and all of the sort of ransacking of temples and midnight marauders, and I might have told this story in season one of my podcast, so I apologize to listeners that might this might be redundant, but it's worth repeating. In our lineage of Zen, everyone sits facing the blank white wall. So you sit down, you spin, and you face the wall. Only the lead teacher is the one facing outward. According to history, tradition, that teacher was facing outward to basically keep an eye on the Zendo because there was so much strife and unrest at that period of time that someone had to keep an eye. If everyone is meditating facing the wall and someone breaks in to kill you, burn your temple down, someone has to obviously be keeping an eye out. So, and that tradition has stuck present day. I don't know if you've heard this or you
I,
have any.
you know, I haven't heard that, and actually, that my understanding is facing the wall is actually a Soto. For your listeners, that's one of the two main branches of Zen
Correct.
kind of style. And my lineage, the White Plum lineage, is actually a combination of Soto and Rinzai. So we
Yes.
actually both sit facing the wall and sit facing in.
Yeah.
Um, there's a different dynamic, as you know, in those types of styles. But I actually heard a story from the Soto lineage, Suzuki Roshi from the San Francisco Zen Center, that during a sitting, some guy who's like a very violent seeming, perhaps unhomed person, kind of broke into the Zendo or walked into the Zendo while everybody was sitting,
Wow.
and people were extremely alarmed and wanted to like usher him out or call the police. And Suzuki Roshi invited him to stay, to sit and stay and sit with everybody, and he did.
Yeah, I mean that's an amazing story, and I have a similar one myself. We had been sitting in Los Angeles at our temple a few years ago, and we had just started Dharma talk, and there was some commotion happening on the patio, the front patio, and we had blinds, but you could kind of see the shadow of someone making a lot of noise and disturbance, and everyone kind of kept ignoring it, but feeling it. You could feel the energy and the tension in the room, and so eventually, I just got up unannounced quietly and went outside to check out the situation. No one had even asked me to do it. I just took it upon myself. It was a homeless person that was definitely on drugs, and it was a female. And I ended up, sitting on the porch with her for probably about a half hour, and just letting her kind of talk and get whatever zoomies, if you will, agitation out of her system. She had a bag full of makeup. She just kept putting on layer upon layer of makeup on her face. I just let her talk and just sat there quietly And after about a half hour, 40 minutes, I think she got a lot of it out of her system. And amazingly enough, Paul, as she's leaving, we had a big laughing Buddha on our front porch. And as she's walking out, she had incense in her backpack along with all of her makeup. And she ended up sort of gifting the Buddha the incense sticks as she was
Mm.
walking out, like making an offering to the Buddha with completely unaware of, probably the significance of such a it was quite amazing. And when I walked back into Zendo, everyone started clapping, sort of just taking that situation and getting a little bit under control. I think that leads us a little bit. I mean, hopefully that's a bit of a segue into sort of the frameworks that you've developed and cultivated, because I think those challenging moments are really what our Zen practice is all about, right? Because when everything is smooth sailing, you're complacent and life is just humming along, your practice is still valuable, of course. But it's in those moments, right? Those hard, challenging moments, like you said, like when the house is on fire, when your
Hmm.
practice really shows itself and its value really kind of is illuminated. With that being said, I know a lot of the work that you're currently doing with executives and executive coaching, these people are putting out fires constantly in their day-to-day life. And not only that, but they're juggling their home life too, right? Probably children and marriage, as well as startups and profitability. How have you been able to sort of bridge that world of house, business on fire, maintaining your Zen equanimity in the process?
Yeah, well, it's essential to have that kind of practice of attention where you're really just paying attention to yourself. That's what meditation is, you could say, is just being increasing the quality of presence that you're bringing to yourself.
Mm,
If you're not doing that, then you're going to be thrown off by everything
yeah.
outside. The beauty of it, to kind of jump to the bottom line, but then I'll talk a little bit about the process. The beauty of it is that when you establish equanimity within yourself. So that's a stable mind. It's an open mind. It's a caring heart mind. Where we talk about heart mind in Zen. It's not a mental thing. An entirely interconnected physiological, mental, physical entity, you could say, that is at the root of our consciousness. To have that and to meet the world with that in all the different places of your life, you almost welcome engagement. You're not hiding from anything. You draw vitality
Wow.
from engaging with people. I don't say you want things to be difficult, you want them to be chaotic, you certainly don't want them to be violent. You welcome the juice of life. You don't want to go to sleep, you don't want to collapse. You're really drawn. This is not so simple because we have these different layers of ourselves. And I talk about the three contracts being with self, with others, and with work.
Yeah.
The three main areas of our life that we need a sacred relationship with. I talk about it in a couple of models. Talk about the three wheels of a tricycle, and you have to have the wheels, intact and then aligned, and you have to know which wheel is the front wheel. So that's one way that I work with people on it. But another way is to understand them as being kind of like Russian dolls. So you've got yourself at the middle, you've got the relational at the next layer out, and then you've got your work at the next layer out. And I think it's important to recognize that this is the level at which you have to work with them. If you're not sound with yourself, fully present with yourself, really loving yourself and stable in that heart mind, you're not going to be able to meet anybody else in relationship lovingly and wisely, and you're not going to be able to do work that's very clear and purposeful and wholehearted. But our culture actually has that completely upside down, where it's all about, high functioning and work, and then it's maybe being a good partner and being a good, father or mother or friend.
Yeah.
And then we kind of put ourselves last, or sometimes we don't even really think about that. I really coach to find that place. And, we use these two terms too, that core level of self is about being, that next level up with relation, you could say, is about having relationship and having, and then the next level up is about doing. That's the work in the world. So we can look at that kind of movement from the inside out. And when we do that, when we establish equanimity, peace, presence, aliveness from the inside out in those areas, everything does tend to align. But here's the last thing I'll say, which is important, which is your intention is absolutely the most important thing. So I say, intention and attention. Those are the two
Mm.
key things.
Yep.
Attention, of course, is just practice of Zen, meditation, the quality of your presence, the quality of your attention. Everything kind of comes from there. But intention is equally important. And at the deepest spiritual level, we talk about our vows, right? Precepts that we take, or vows, or whatever, whether they're religious vows or whether they're just a personal vow you have to act in a certain way, or to show up in life in a certain way, or to honor your family in a certain way, or marriage vows that you make with respect to your partner.
Yeah.
These have this incredible energy, incredible ability to channel the energy that arises, which is really your own wisdom energy, and it channels it so that you're kind of a fully functioning whole being.
Wow, Paul. I mean, there's so much stuff you just mic dropped there that I'm just like, woof, giving me almost chills. I mean, so there's a lot of different things going through my mind I want to ask you about, but let's just stay in the Val channel for now. As someone who took them as well, what do you think is it about taking vows? Because if we use the analogy of marriage vows, as you just did, we have a 50% or over 50% divorce rate right now in America, and we've had it for 20 years plus. There is one portion of society that are taking vows and then not necessarily following through with them, at least until death do us part. I mean, I come from a divorced family, and there's a lot of others that have been through that, and there's nothing wrong with it. But what do you think, from a Zen perspective, makes vows so powerful from a practitioner standpoint?
I'll blow your mind with this one. So, what Maizumi Roshi said, he was asked, and Maizumi Roshi was the founder of the Zen Center of Los Angeles, the
Yep.
person I took Buddhist vows with back in
Yep.
1991. He was asked by someone, probably someone new to the Zen Center, what goes on after death, after the physical body dies. Probably looking for something like, does reincarnation exist, or is there a soul? Some kind of answer like that. As you know, being a Zen student, most Zen teachers say, I'm not going to answer that question. We don't understand life and death. I can't answer that question in terms that you're going to understand because you have a faulty understanding of life or death.
Well, my favorite comes from Dogen, who says firewood becomes ash and never becomes firewood again.
There you go.
So,
There you go. Okay. So that's a deep Zen answer. Yeah, right there.
yeah.
But what Maizumi Roshi said was, what goes on after the physical body dies is your vows.
Wow.
Yeah. So something, and this is the way I look at it, and I give people, I'm a precept teacher, so people take the Buddhist vows with me. I have 4 more coming up in several weeks. I'll be giving
Wow.
the vows to. When you take vows and you vocalize them, even if you don't quite know what you're getting into or understand what you're doing, there's a new being that's born, kind of your vow being. And that's why we get a Dharma name when we take the Buddhist vows in the Zen tradition. It's almost like a new being that's born. I look at it as a transitional being between your karmic identity and your Buddha nature. And it's in between. And so that being that is born in the place of those vows persists beyond the death of your biological identity and your physical body.
Wow. Do you go by your Buddhist precept name?
I do in my community, I'm Gyoto Sensei, so I'm either Sensei or Gyoto.
Yeah, yeah. Please let me know how you prefer to be, I was given a name as well, Hofu. Translates to Dharma wind. Do you have your students shave their heads?
No, no, we don't have that level of ordination in my lineage. I took a novitiate priest ordination back in 2010, and I shaved my head. My teacher was kind of experimenting with more priestly forms. At
Hmm.
that point, I ended up disrobing a couple years later because I didn't feel like that was the functioning for me. And it kind of relates back to what I said earlier about my path, where I felt called to kind of be in the world and working in the world. I felt like that was the path for me, and also my community just didn't really have a role for that level, for that kind of role. It's all about what's needed for one's community. Bernie Glassman, who's a very, very famous successor in my lineage,
And a good friend of
um,
Jeff Bridges.
and good friend of Jeff Bridges. Yeah, and Bernie, passed away a few years ago. He disrobed and then went from Tetsugen Tetsugen Roshi, which was he was called for many years, and he said, "Just call me Bernie." He always felt it was all about what's needed in one's community.
Yeah, it's a good point because the robes, the names can all be very powerful, but I have found, and in my practice, teachers have talked about this. If you walk into a room with your Zen robes on versus in an everyday layperson's clothes, quite a different reaction you get from people. If you go to the supermarket in robes versus street clothes, Western street
Yes.
clothes, very different reaction you get from people in public. Yet what is underneath is all the same, obviously. But it's that outwardly appearance that people sometimes get a little bit hung up on.
Yeah, exactly. And in our culture, there's kind of a value in that. To see a Westerner who's adopted that kind of path, obviously it can have a really big effect on people. And there's that. Also, they tend to say, "Oh, that's really exotic and wild, but I could never do that." Right? That's strange. So I'm going to put all spiritual practice into this place on the shelf where, oh, I wish I could do that, but that's not for me. My skillful means, I hopefully skillful, is to completely neutralize that sort of mindset and to say, no, everybody has a spiritual path of development available to them. You don't have to adopt anything exotic. You don't have to adopt anything in particular, but you have access to these wisdom traditions. And as Dogen, who you mentioned earlier, he said to study Buddhism is to study the self.
Yeah.
So
And to study the self is to forget the self.
exactly. So I mean, it's such a radical statement when
Yeah.
understood in the context of Western understanding of spirituality and religion,
Yeah.
right? I mean, nobody says to study Christianity is to study the self, right? You would say to study Christianity is to study God.
Yeah.
Maybe other religions would say the same, but not
Yeah.
not Buddhism. To study Buddhism is to study the self. So Buddhism is a course of self-study, which is spiritual because we find that the self is not what we think it is. And when we wake up to what the self truly is, we find it to be coextensive with what we what we experience as the divine.
Yeah. Amazing. Something you said earlier that really struck me that I want to come back to is the vitality comes from the engagement, welcoming the juice of life. That was really powerful because I think going back to the type of customers or clients that you're coaching, right? And sort of the archetype of that particular person, the high achiever, very motivated, very driven, potentially very busy, and a lot of responsibility and things of that nature. It seems to me that most people want to avoid over engagement, right? Like it's like, whoa, I already have enough going on. I actually would probably think my day is a good day with the least amount of engagement possible. If I could look at my calendar and see no meetings and no fire drills I have to put out, like that's probably a good day for most people. So, how does that particular teaching that you explained earlier help you define and work with these people?
Yeah, what you resist persists, right? So if you're looking to avoid overwhelm, you'll find overwhelm. And you know this as being kind of the inner law of our minds, our body minds, right? We call it, in Zen, we call it problem seeking mind, right? That's kind of at the root. So when we see ourselves in, say, a place of lack, time lack, or it's money lack, or it's attentional lack, then we're focused on what we don't have, and we will tend to remain in that mind of not having. Where I counsel people is turn to what is abundant in your presence right now. But don't do that with the intention of avoiding this overwhelm or becoming calm, right? This is about shifting your inner experience, which in turn will shift your experience of your outer experience of externals. So there's kind of I think there's a mindset shift that happens when I coach executives, which is to say you're not gonna work directly with those externals, the bank account, the schedule necessarily. By working with the internals, your experience of the externals is going to change.
Amazing. And so, do you have any stories or examples of types of people you've worked with where you've seen, great outcomes, obviously, taking someone who's come to you in kind of like shambles and disarray, struggling with, work-life balance, and you've been able to sort of get them back on track through your coaching sort of approach and programs?
Yeah, that's what I take most pride in is taking people who are in that way. And I've been working with as one example, very successful entrepreneur for about 2 years. We're kind of coming to the end of a 2 year period where I've really helped him a lot. So he actually just wrote me a long testimonial, so I can kind of just reflect that to
Yeah,
you.
please, please.
Is he said he was in complete disarray and chaos. He'd look at his schedule and he would freak out. He wouldn't know priorities. He'd be all over the map. During the course of our work together, he got married and had a kid. This was back in January, so he's the father of a newborn,
Wow.
and he was really, bouncing off the walls and, in chaos and uninspired, and was finding it very difficult to function, even though he was actually running his business.
But life was sort of dictating his sort of mental health, it sounds like a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Very much so. Very, very reactive. I think a lot of high functioning people are highly reactive. So as you know, one of the first things you see when you just get a practice, a sadhana, you could say, of paying attention to yourself is that you see what you're doing in terms of your own reactivity. You're allowed to see and feel what your body's doing in these reactive situations. And when you get just a glimpse of that, the first thing that happens, you say, oh, holy cow, this is worse than I thought. I'm actually more reactive than I thought. The monkey mind is louder than I thought.
Yeah.
The physical anxiety symptoms are even louder than I thought because I've been suppressing a lot of them. The ones I've been aware of are only the ones that have burst through my resistances. And my suppression mechanisms. So you see that, holy cow. But then relatively quickly, you can say, okay, I can actually cultivate space for these things. And then from that place of grounding. So my client was able to really ground in his purposeful work. And my three contracts, framework allowed him to do that. So I needed, in his case, it was helping him align where his priorities were in terms of aligning his family with his spiritual development, a deeply spiritual fellow in our Zen tradition, and with his work, this successful entity. Almost a week to week balancing of those three wheels of his tricycle to
Mhm.
kind of move amongst them in a way that was kind of mutually supportive. And that's kind of an ongoing practice of doing that, but he's been able to really align those things. So now he moves and flows through what's needed, like we were talking about a little bit ago, almost on an hour to hour basis. He's been able to, cultivate the ability to do that. He's also tripled his top line revenue in the time that I've been working with him.
Wow. That's impressive. Are you, with someone like him or others, are you actually physically meditating with them? Are you helping them establish a meditation practice if they don't currently have one when they come to you? Or is it all kind of like theoretical frameworks and methodologies and coaching?
No, I do. Those who don't, I'll work with them at the beginning to give them a practice, but then I'll spend diminishing amounts of time with them over, say, the months that we're working. So you've got your practice, and then I will check in with them on their practice, and sometimes it's only 10 minutes a day as the basis of our work together. But then the work together will get into kind of how they're functioning in the different areas of their life.
And how important do you believe your program and your approach is that people are actually practicing, doing the practice, sitting zazen?
That's an interesting question. Some more than others. Some are sitting twice a day for half an hour or more a day. Probably like a bell curve. There's a few that are really doing, I mean, they sit more than me. And then the large majority are maybe doing 20 to 30 minutes a day. And then there's a smaller number that are doing even less than that. Yeah.
Interesting.
There are certain kind of types of people and even types of roles that probably seen this in your executive coaching too. Like
Yeah.
lawyers, for example, I find it really hard to like sit still with a
Yeah.
still mind. And it's not a surprise because their work is language based, right? It's all about words. The presence that we tap into, as you know, it's nonverbal. It comes from that place of silence. The
Yeah.
verbality supports the thinking mind, that sixth sense. And they like live and breathe in that world. It's their livelihood, it's their ego attachment, it's their mastery, it's all word based. And it's very difficult for them to, shift into the silence.
Mm. So speaking of, talk to me a little bit about your mastery of resources, material currencies, mental currencies, energetic currencies.
Yeah, it's a what I found it to be a very interesting way to look at our reactivities, because I believe that a lot of our reactivities actually come from feelings of lack around these core resources. So you could say attentional, relational, financial, informational, these kind of core resources. Energetic is another one, right? And so what the Buddha talked about in terms of the second arrow, we suffer a pain, but then we add to that in terms of a fear or a resistance or a reaction to that initial sensation.
Yep,
And it's the second arrow that causes much more difficulty and suffering than the first arrow.
absolutely.
Okay. So feelings of resource lack are kind of, they're actually more second arrow effects because they come from, okay, an example might be, I have some hunger pains. Right? I have some hunger pains. So I'm needing food. But we can, if we don't know where the next meal is coming from, we can start to freak out.
Mm.
Okay. And so that's a second order effect generated by a speculation about or a fear that I'm not going to get what I need, right? Kind of like not being in right relation with your actual resourcing. And this pretty much goes across the board is we're usually responding to an exaggerated sense of lack
Yeah.
that's more of in our minds. So when I talk about these currencies, I say, let's tune into exactly what I do have, right? Turn into that, and then also recognize that everything is an exchange, right? We're always to enter into, say, business is to enter into exchange of currency. It's not like money's just going to keep pouring in while you sit there doing nothing. You're putting out resources, including capital resources, and then you're drawing resources into yourself. And this applies to everything: relational currencies, attentional currencies, energetic currencies, financial currencies, all of these. What I coach people to do is to get in right relation with these currency exchanges that are truly present with what the flows actually are and not based on the reactive patterns around them.
Or delusion.
Delusion, absolutely.
It sounds like you just referenced, without actually saying the word, it sounds like a form of gratitude practice that you're encouraging.
Definitely. Yes. Yeah, that's actually right at the key. That's right at the core. It's a little touchy to actually coach people or guide them and say, okay, practice gratitude now. I found this to be the place. It's to be the case. It's kind of like telling people, to practice forgiveness. It's kind of an advanced practice, right? You really need to be sincere to find yourself to a sincere place in terms of being grateful and being, say, forgiving is another one like that. And compassion is another one too, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to offer compassion to all these beings. Easier said than done,
Yeah.
It has, these are deep, deep practices. The way I start with most people with that would be just be aware of what you have and then be appreciative of what you have. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually interesting, Paul, because maybe we'll sort of wrap up with this. I actually usually lead with this, and I was so excited to jump into it with you that I forgot. But as you know, the name of the podcast is The Thief in the Empty Room,
Mm.
which is based off of a koan from Shinji Shobogenzo, number 96. And so I'm going to read it to you, and I'd like to get your take on it. And yeah, we should have been starting with this, but we'll end with this instead. So a monk asked his teacher, what concrete thing did the ancestral masters get when they obtained the peaceful state? The teacher replied, it is like a thief who enters an empty room. Do you need me to repeat that, or do you think you got it?
Yeah, I think I got it. Yeah.
Okay, so what what's your commentary or your opinion on this koan?
Yeah.
I like that short and sweet, you know what I mean, and punchy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, from this place of I have nothing to steal, I have nothing to hold on to, nothing to take away, then that is that place of fundamental peace.
Do you think that that would be a concept or a koan that would be difficult for executives and sort of high performance individuals to grasp this koan?
I think it is a challenging one. Yeah, I think it is a challenging one because it's about what do I have? What can I get? And an ethic of more to bring in. So you need to face a mindset of poverty, of spiritual poverty, you could say. And of course, in our culture, that's a no-no.
Yeah,
That's shameful. So I do think it is, but also I think it's very available for people to connect with it when you remind them how much joy there is in a life of simplicity.
yeah,
Less is more, you could say. And you guide them down that path of recognizing that actually less is more, less is more. You don't need to put all these things together, create all of this problems
yeah,
that actually you have the ability to simplify. There's a people get it, at a deep level. I think our human nature kind of gets that, and I think
yeah.
I think there is an accessible path even for executives to kind of find their way there.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I mean, I think it's hopeful to hear you say that because I agree with you. It's like we don't always understand everything with our thinking mind, or used earlier, our monkey mind. There is a deeper intuition that I think we could tap into, and all we need to potentially do as coaches, right, teachers, conduits, is to maybe just potentially plant seeds, right, in the garden of people's minds, as
Hmm.
you and I are doing through our work, podcasting, right? It's planting seeds. And for those who are inspired enough to water those seeds, who knows what kind of beautiful gardens could blossom from there. But it's not up to us to judge or be overly concerned about, oh, why is this part of society not blossoming? It's
I agree. Yeah, it's really true. And I think the one key way to connect the dots for people is to say, look at the problems you're creating for yourself and your family, even, your loved ones, with that mindset of more and problem seeking, and you could say acquisitiveness. It really impacts your own aliveness and joy. So people can access it that way.
That's awesome. Thanks so much. Is there anything else that you want to add about your program? Obviously, you and I have been working closely. I know a lot about your offer, but anything you want to share that's worth mentioning before we kind of wrap up here?
Oh, I've really enjoyed the conversation, Craig. And yeah, I am taking executive coaching clients through the end of the year. I have a few more spots open. So anybody who'd like to get in touch with me, zenatwork.org. I love to work with people who are, wanting to deepen in purpose and performance in this way. So,
That's awesome. Purpose and performance. I like that little jingle. And I will just say, Paul, that one of the ways that you and I connected was when I was sort of starting my journey in 2020, building out my coaching program. I just found you by Googling you. I was Googling, Zen and business, and your website came up, and I saw, oh, there's someone out there actually doing something similar to me. We're kind of a bit of unicorns in this regard.
yeah.
And so it's so cool that the internet has allowed for this. And it kind of reminds me of the magic that exists in the world.
Hmm.
And I know that I've sat in and participated in some Dharma talks where the fact that we could, be on a virtual call, you and I, you're in Boulder, I'm in California, and we could connect like this. We could meet over the internet. If we want to see each other, we could go to an airport, hop on an airplane, fly and see one another. I mean, these are all absolute miracles.
Hmm.
And we get so desensitized to the amazing richness of our lives because we become accustomed to all of the things that we have now that it's like, oh, now I'm annoyed that I'm waiting in line at the airport because the security line is moving too slowly for me. Or I'm waiting at Starbucks. Once I get past security, the Starbucks line is going too slowly. It's like these are all opportunities for practice. And we lose sight of that sometimes, I think, because we're given so much, we have so much at our fingertips now. We have to discern a little bit. And I think Zen practice is a great way to help people do that. So I highly encourage my audience and my listeners that if you're executive looking for coaching, Paul will be an amazing, obviously, resource for you. And highly encourage you to check out his work at zenatwork.org.
Thanks, Greg.
So thank you, Paul. I appreciate your time. And we will continue this journey together again shortly. So thanks so much. If you've made it this far, that means you've listened to the whole podcast. And for that, I want to say thank you. Please feel free to visit my website or social media for more information on my work at Craig Jared French. Until next time.